Everything goes. Hopefully, you guys having a great and exceptional day. Been a minute since I've been live on Instagram, so used to love the filters that Instagram had. But it's hard to utilize them. But hey, it's been a minute since I've gone live on a Saturday at this time of morning. But I'm reminding myself of how good it is to get a good night's sleep. Taking care of yourself really starts with rest. You can eat as healthy as much as you want. You can work out as much as you want, but if you don't, get enough rest, then it's going to affect your mental and definitely your physical. So that's why I've been emphasizing on getting sleep, more sleep, one, and then getting to bed earlier as well. I'm not in my 20s anymore. I'm not supposed to be staying up till 1 or 2 in the morning for no reason. It's just a waste of time unless I'm making some money. So anyways, I've been meaning to do this video for the last 2 weeks now. I remember seeing this article on Google, and then my friend slash coworker brought this to my attention again, and I was like, you know what, I gotta make a video about this. I'm from the DMV area. I grew up in Wooddbridge, Virginia, which is 30 minutes south of Washington, D.C. And every time I go out of town, I say, yeah, I'm from the DMV area, but I live in Woodbridge, Virginia, which is 30 minutes south of Washington, D.C. Because when most people visit the DMV area that are not familiar with the area, they just think it's all Washington, D.C. And no, DMV stands for District of Columbia. That's what Washington, D.C. is. The quote-unquote nation's capital. Then M stands for Maryland, and V stands for Virginia. So very simple DMV area because it's all connected. Northern Virginia, Southern Maryland, is connected to Washington, D.C. Heck, Washington, D.C. used to be a part of Maryland at one time. So D.C. actually has more of a connection to Maryland than it does Virginia from a historical standpoint. Has more, even though Virginia and Maryland have a historical relationship as well, I just think the level of connection with Maryland and D.C. is like here, and with Virginia and D.C. it's like here. So I leave it at that. But my dad's side of the family comes from Virginia, North Carolina. My mom's side of the family comes from New York, Connecticut, and North Carolina. So anyways, that's a little bit of background on that one. So anyways, the name of this article, let me move my phone here. It says this is the fastest growing suburb in the United States, and it's just 30 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. Now, this article, today is April 26th. This article was published on April 10th, 2025. So it tripped me out, okay? It tripped me out because I'm just like, because it's talking about the fastest growing suburb, Wooddbridge, Virginia, where I'm from. Now, before I get into the article, Wooddbridge, Virginia is not a bad place, but it's not the most exciting suburb to live in. Now, most suburbs, you would probably say, hey, Larry, most suburbs aren't supposed to be exciting places. They're supposed to be places where mediocre shopping malls and shopping centers, decent neighborhoods, and decent schools. So if you're looking for that, then yeah, Wooddbridge, Virginia, and mediocre restaurants. Might have a couple of good mom and pop restaurants here and there. People raising families. So if that's what you're looking for, then yeah, Wooddbridge, Virginia is the perfect place for you. I got to say that, yeah, that's why I was like, don't think of me being Mr. 100% doom and gloom. Like, no, if that's what you're looking for, basic mediocre schools, basic mediocre shopping centers in a mall, basic overpriced, overpriced housing, overpriced restaurants. But nowadays in the economy, the last 2 years, the cost of living has gotten so egregious with inflation and all, and then with new people changing rules, that the cost of living has gotten so crazy that the restaurants are losing money because a lot of people are opting out to not go out to eat. A lot of people are eventually Uber Eats, and I think not even eventually, it's true. Uber Eats, Grubhub, and DoorDash are going to have and will continuously lose money because people are going to opt out to not order out as much. During the pandemic, I discovered DoorDash, I discovered Uber Eats, and I discovered Grubhub, and took advantage of it because they had lower prices back then because the demand was higher. You didn't have inflation, one, and two, restaurants lowered the prices because we were in lockdown, so they were like, hey, we got to make money, so whatever we got to do, we just got to cut corners where we got to cut corners. And then the delivery fees weren't as egregious or crazy. And then with Grubhub, you had if you're an Amazon Prime member, you get zero delivery fees on orders that are up to a certain amount. With Uber Eats, I've noticed that they have with DoorDash, they have a DoorDash Pass. With Uber Eats, they do sales every now and then. So they have and now they're doing it more so now because more and more people are opting out to not order out as much and not eat out as much because it's too expensive. If you go on, like in 2025, I've said this, going on a date is a luxury because when you take somebody out to eat, unless it's McDonald's or a fast food joint, you're 9 times out of 10, if it's a place where there's alcohol, even if you're not drinking, but if there's a place where they serve alcohol, the lowest your bill is going to be is $80 to $90. And that's, for most people, that's a low grocery bill nowadays for the week. So with that being said, that's why it's like, hey, I might as well go to the grocery store, cook some food, eat in the house. Like my last trip to going to San Antonio, I know I'm going off subject here, but I'll be back. My last trip to San Antonio, the most I spent at a restaurant was $60 because I'm like, hey, I'm cutting corners as much as possible because going out to eat has gotten expensive. It's not that I can't afford it, but why pay for it when I can put that money away and I can invest that money into a tangible asset? That's always my mindset. All right, so let's get back to the story because before I go, remember, Woodbridge, Virginia, the whole DMV area. It's not just Woodbridge. You got, from Virginia, you got Stafford County, which is south of Woodbridge, Princeton County, Fredericksburg, Spotsylvania, from Fairfax County to City of Alexandria to Arlington County, all overpriced suburbs. Okay, all overpriced suburbs. Now, going to Maryland, PG County, Prince George's County, Montgomery County, Charles County. These are the counties that are surrounding the DMV area, all overpriced suburbs at this point. Okay, so that's why I said let's just put it into perspective, all overpriced suburbs. Washington, D.C. is the most expensive city to live in. It's like probably the third most expensive city to live in on the East Coast right now because New York is number 1, Boston's number 2 as far as major cities, and D.C.'s number 3. Philadelphia's catching up with D.C., and Baltimore soon will be catching up to Philadelphia. So Baltimore is the last major city to get gentrified on the eastern seaboard. All right. So back to Woodbridge, Virginia. So this is from travelleisure.com. So clearly this is done by people that do not live here for the most part. It says Woodbridge, Virginia was named the fastest growing suburb in the country by Go Banking rates. The population of this Northern Virginia community, located half an hour outside of the nation's capital, grew from 887% between 2018 and 2023. And Go Banking Rates reports that a family would need an annual income of over $120,000 to live in Woodbridge, Virginia. Now, not only is this 100% correct, but to add on to it, because I've noticed specifically during the pandemic, the population in Woodbridge has increased significantly. And the quality of everything, for the most part, to me, has gone down. More and more, not more roads can be built because, there's no more space. But of course, let's put more overpriced apartments, condos, and single family housing that if you, from all the new neighborhoods, you have this much space between your neighbor. Let's build more shopping centers that doesn't, bring any fun to the equation whatsoever. Fun. When I think of fun, I think of more than just going out to a overpriced restaurant with mediocre food, because that's what 90% of the restaurants in Woodbridge, Virginia have are overpriced, mediocre restaurants. Okay, now, and this is my personal opinion. I know there's other people that feel the same way, but hey, if you like going out to mediocre restaurants and paying $100 for a date or for your family, go for it. Between going to Atlanta, going to Los Angeles, going to Houston, Texas, going to San Antonio, Texas, going to San Diego, going to Portland, Oregon, going to Seattle, Washington, going to Toronto, Canada, going to Vancouver, Canada, Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada. The restaurants in those cities and the suburban communities tend to outweigh the authenticity of majority of the restaurants that are in Woodbridge, Virginia. The food is better, the service is better, the atmosphere is better. Just my personal opinion. Now, as far as the stuff to do with families, you got Chuck E. Cheese's, you have certain parks, you have your water parks during the summertime. So you have, if you're looking to do the family fun stuff, you have enough of that there for the most part. Carnivals come and all that good stuff. So there's certain fun things for children to do. I'm not going to knock that. But for adult fun, not so much, and nightlife, not so much. Everything revolves around adult fun in the DMV area, revolves around Washington, D.C. and the National Harbor in Maryland. Meaning you have to drive 30 minutes to, let's tackle on traffic. Let's make it an hour. Okay, tackle on traffic, you got to make it an hour. Then 9 times out of 10, the harbor, you can get free parking. DC, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna have to pay to park and ensure that you park in a garage that's open at the hours that you're going to be in the city, because you can be put in a position where the parking garages get locked up at night, which is stupid to me. Because most major cities, the parking garages stay open at least 24 hours a day, because you have this thing called technology where people can just pay as they go. But certain things in DC are just old fashioned. But Washington DC wasn't meant to have all these people that they have right now. So the city's overcrowded, and the city was quote unquote designed and created during the colonial era of the United States of America, back when we were just a bunch of colonies, not even a quote unquote country yet, because we were still, not we, because my folks were personal property of corporations and other people and families. But the local colonists and whatnot were subjects of the royal crown, aka at the time known as England. Nowadays we call it the UK, the United Kingdom. All right. So, with that being said, yes, you have to have $120,000 to live, to have a decent middle class income, and it's starting at that. So this article doesn't go into, if you drive around in most of the neighborhoods, specifically the older single family neighborhoods, you're going to see at least 2 to 4 families living in one house, because they can't afford to rent the house, and they darn sure can't even afford to own the house. They don't have the right credit, they don't have the right access to capital, they don't have the right income to own a house or even rent a property. So they need 6 salaries in order for them to do that. A lot of neighborhoods are overcrowded in Woodbridge, Virginia. Very overcrowded. The roads are very overcrowded. And then bear in mind, because everything is connected to Washington, D.C., you have this thing called the Easy Pass, where you have to pay if you don't want to sit in traffic. And luckily, hopefully there's not an accident on the Easy Pass, but you have to pay to get to work. You have to pay to go have fun. So not only are you spending money with your gas and wear and tear on your vehicle, but you're spending money on the Easy Pass. Like great example, when I left work yesterday, I utilized the Easy Pass. Now usually I get to work early enough, because I get up at 3 to 3:30 in the morning to get to work by 5 o'clock, so I can get off between 12 and 1 o'clock, and not have to sit in traffic, number one, and number two, get an Easy Pass. But I know Fridays, for the most part, coming home from work, I will have to get an Easy Pass, because the traffic is going to be bad, especially with the summertime being here. 95 being a very populated highway that people go up and down to go to Virginia Beach, go to the Carolinas, go to Georgia, go to Florida. People go to New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, all on the Eastern Seaboard. You get where I'm going with this. Okay. So, before I even go further with this article, it says Americans are moving out of the big cities, according to a 2024 report by Goldman Sachs. An estimated 650,000 people left the largest U.S. cities in 2022, and that was due to the pandemic, and an additional 550,000 in 2023. So where are they heading to? Gold Banking Rates has a good idea. On Thursday, the website released its new study ranking the fastest growing suburbs in the nation. Woodbridge, Virginia, a town 30 minutes south of D.C., was at the top of the list. Northern Virginia communities' populations grew by 900%. Did you hear that? 900% to a whooping 43,000 in 2023. 43,443 in 2023. Woodbridge is by far the number 1 fastest growing suburb in America, according to the latest research. C.J. Williamson, a researcher at Gold Banking Rate, told Travel Plus Leisure. The D.C. area suburb experienced a massive population boom between 2018 and 2023. Now, before I go further with Williams' comments, and this is true because, look, this is one thing I can say about Woodbridge and even the whole DMV area. We usually get a lot of people that either coming from other parts of the world or other parts of the country, because they have a connection with the federal government. As a federal government employee, they're in the military, they were in the military, or they became a government contractor. All right. And then you have the people that, open up their small businesses and things of that nature. Then, of course, you have the people that live here that have to keep the economy going, from mechanics to construction workers, blue collar workers, medical professionals. The list goes on and on. All right. To keep the community booming and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, the quality of life in Woodbridge, Virginia has gone down significantly because, like I said, the two main things are, well, the three main things. I call the DMV area uptight country. Why? Maybe it's because of the booming population of federal employees and people connected with the federal government. I'm not knocking the federal government, but that's the only conclusion I can draw from because I've been to other parts of the country where there's not a significant big military and federal government population, and people just seem to be a lot more friendlier, laid back and chill. Well, I can't even say military. It's just the DC mindset is I'm special. I know everything. I'm the most educated. I've done this and I've done that. Because even if you work in, because I've been told this by friends, if you work in a federal government setting, or if you work in a government contracting setting, or if you're even in a military setting, away from the DMV area, Washington D.C., Maryland, Virginia, then you're in an area where things are much more chill and relaxed. Like a friend of mine, he used to work for the military in Hawaii, and he said they were wearing shorts and freaking Hawaiian shirts every day to work. A guy came from D.C. and was wearing a suit, and everybody looked at him like he was a crackhead. And the guy only lasted 3 months because he was mad because the atmosphere was too laid back for him. So that's why I call the DMV area uptight country. Another example, for another buddy of mine, when he was in the military, his favorite duty station was San Diego. Now, San Diego is one of the most expensive cities in America, but it's a very beautiful city. And the mentality there is way more laid back compared to the DMV area. Hence, I call the DMV area uptight country. And between the atmosphere of being uptight, number one, two, overcrowded, number three, everything's overpriced, it just makes the place much more unpleasant of a place to live in. So I'll leave it at that. Now, a lot of people are like, well, California has the same issues. Yes, California does. But here's the difference. The suburbs in California, and I can really speak on Southern California, not Northern California, because I've only been in Northern California one time. You can go see a concert, and I've been to my favorite concert and comedy shows in a suburb outside of Los Angeles, 45 minutes outside of Los Angeles. Case in point, I've seen, Godfrey and, what's his name? The one guy I can't stand, in Ontario Comedy Improv in Ontario, California, which is a suburb outside of Los Angeles. Okay. I can't remember that dude's name because it gets on my nerves. But anyways, Ari Spears, and Corey Holcomb, all these comedians at Improv at Ontario, all right, had me in tears, laughing my butt off, things of that nature. What was it? Chico Bean, seeing Chico Bean in Ontario Improv. So this is a suburb at a mall where you can go to the mall, go shopping, go get something to eat, go see a movie, and go see an improv show. Right down the street from this mall is an indoor concert center facility where I saw Ice Cube, Bone Thugs and Harmony, Dub C, Exhibit, Warren G. The list goes on and on. Not Bad Bunny, but I forgot the other guy's name. But anyways, a lot of Cypress Hill, a lot of great artists. Okay. This is all in a suburb. So for people who live in the greater Los Angeles area, because, there's a city of Los Angeles, there's Orange County, there's Riverside, there's Ontario, there's Corona. Those are all the suburbs. You can go, even in downtown Riverside, you can see your favorite comedians. You can see your favorite music artists in a suburb. In Woodbridge, Virginia, at one time, now we have a casino here, but they're not having any comedy acts there. At one time we had last year, there was a nice restaurant called the Temple Lounge, but it got shut down because somebody got shot and killed in the parking lot, unfortunately. But they were starting to have comedy shows there. So it was a good thing. It was definitely needed because trying to go to D.C. is a nightmare because of the traffic. The people are a bunch of douchebags, no matter if they're well-to-do or ghetto. It's not like I haven't been to Washington, D.C. in 2 years, and I live 30 minutes south of it because the experiences were not pleasant. So that's why I don't go to D.C. All right. It's not that it was dangerous for me. It just wasn't. If I'm going to spend a lot of money to go someplace, the experience better be pleasant. The experience was not pleasant in D.C. That's why I don't go to D.C. That's why I'd rather hop on a plane, leave the East Coast, and go have some fun elsewhere because the D.C. area is not a fun place to live for this guy. But I'll leave it at that. Okay. So anyways, back to the story at hand. So now they say, I know people was like, well, Larry, Prince William County, which is where Woodbridge is located, has a place called Jiffy Lube Live. I said, yeah, actually 2 years ago I saw Snoop Dogg perform there. So Wiz Khalifa performed there. It was cool. It wasn't, wasn't the worst experience, but that place is only open during the spring and the summertime because during the winter months, it's an outdoors place and it's too cold to be out there. So therefore, I don't know why at this point, with this being the #1 growing suburb, to this time, a developer has not built a place that is indoors so that you can have events like that year round. I'm just saying. But what do I know? Because that thing has been like that since I was a kid, and it's just outdated in my personal opinion. Like that facility should be shut down and made to be indoors. Build around it so where it's not an outdoors experience, it's an indoors experience like most places are. So I'll leave it at that. Like I said, it's a very boring place, and most of the people I know with means, they get on a plane all the time. They leave this area, or they get on a bus. They're always leaving the DMV area because it's not the most fun place to live. I just got to keep it real. But that's just my personal opinion. All right. And before I go forward with what Williamson said, let's go with the average home cost in the DMV area. It varies by location. So in Washington, D.C., and this is at the low end of these houses. The newer houses cost way more. I'm giving you the low end. Washington, D.C., the median home price is around $600,000, while in Maryland, approximately $400,000, and in Virginia, it's around $371,000. Now, bear in mind, this was done back in 2023. 2 years later, the cost of everything has gone up. So I'm gonna guesstimate that in DC it's probably $650,000 to $700,000 at the low end. Maryland is $450,000 to $500,000 at the low end, and in Virginia, I know, and I've seen it with my own eyes, it's $400,000 to $450,000 to $500,000 at the low end. And all the new homes, you see the prices saying starting in the low $700,000 and $800,000 for a house in Woodbridge, Virginia. You're not now. People will be like, well, there's other parts of the country where it's just as egregious. I don't disagree, but it's in those parts of the country the much more exciting things to do. Hell, say what you want about LA. At least LA has a beautiful beach, to look at. Okay, say what you want about Los Angeles, New York. Say what you want about New York, but at least with New York, there's access to the things that most people that live in New York, either because they immigrated to the United States and they don't know any better, or they went to New York because they want to work on Wall Street, or they want to be in the entertainment industry. That's the kind of people moving to New York. Let's just keep it real right now. Like same thing with like people that are moving to LA is because they're working in the entertainment industry. That's the kind of people moving to LA. And the same thing with the DMV area. The kind of people that move into the DMV area, or people like with LA, either they're moving to LA because they're from another part of the world, and this is the only choice, the best option that they have. And then plus places like DC, places like New York, and places like LA have programs for legal and illegal immigrants to come and get housing and whatnot, and certain access to capital and things of that nature. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm gonna let you make that decision. But that's how these places end up keeping a growing population, specifically New York and LA, because the cost of living has gotten so egregious that people cannot afford to live there. The DMV area, Woodbridge in particular, is starting to get that way as well. This is New York and LA, and this is the DMV area. Okay, when it comes to egregious cost of living. In the next year or two, we're gonna be like this far away from LA and New York. We're not that far as far as cost of living. Because I've been to New York and I've been to LA and I've seen how people have 3 to 4 families living up in one house. And that's how the DMV area, Woodbridge including, has become because of the cost of living is so high. And with these tariffs and inflation and people losing their jobs, because remember, the federal government, a lot of agencies were closed down. People lost their jobs. People have taken retirement. So this area is going to see a lot of people leave, or they'll go work in the private sector for a little bit. But the chances of people leaving the DMV area is getting higher and higher every day. Why? Because they can't afford to live here. I was just seeing a video about a man who went from Washington, D.C. to moving to Asheville, North Carolina. And why? Because he wanted to retire and he knew he couldn't afford to retire in Washington, D.C. Unless you're rich, most people cannot afford to retire in the DMV area, aka Woodbridge, even though they keep building a bunch of senior living homes. But this must be for the well-to-do people because, but I know the agreement that comes with living in an assisted living home, they basically have control over your finances and whatnot, and you're basically given allowance and whatnot, and you're given the bare minimum depending on the facility that you live in. That's a whole nother story for a whole nother day, for a whole nother video, and I'll leave it at that. I don't know all the particulars, but I know the one-on-one aspects of it. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So now let's look at the salary range. Now, The average salary in Washington, D.C. metro area, now this is the metro area, not just specifically Woodbridge includes parts of Virginia and Maryland, is generally higher than the national average. In 2025, the median salary in Washington, D.C. is around between $76,908, with 80% of salaries falling between $34,800 and $167,000. The average hourly wage in the area was reported to be $42.49 in May 2023, which is 35% above the national average. But when they say the national average, you have to bear in mind that other parts of the country, like I'll say Idaho, Wyoming, the Carolinas, and Georgia, the cost of living isn't as egregious as it is in the DMV area. Same thing with California. Places like California, Washington State, and New York, they've had to bump up the minimum wage because the cost of living is just so freaking egregious. Even certain, they have to subsidize. Heck, people like in New York and California, Los Angeles, San Francisco, they've had to subsidize housing for the law enforcement personnel and for the corrections officers because they could not afford, on the salaries that they were given, they cannot afford to live in those cities. I remember, and this was back in 2013, 14, I used to watch a show called Locked Up on MSNBC, and they was talking about in the Bay Area, because that's the most expensive part of the continental United States to live in, i.e. San Francisco, Oakland, etc. They basically, outside of the state prison that's in the Bay Area, the city or the state built a neighborhood for the officers to live in and rent from the state because they could not, those corrections officers could not afford to live work and live in the Bay Area, and they'd have to basically drive 1 to 2 hours just to get to work. And when you have a commute like that, I don't care what anybody says, your quality of life sucks. And most people I know with those kind of long, egregious commutes are not in the best shape, and the quality of life sucks. And they do, majority of them do this because they want to live out in the middle of nowhere. I'm not mad at that, but they, like I said, their health is in decline and the quality of life is in decline. And the only thing that they ever look forward to is the weekend, which is pretty sad. I think that's probably one of the most saddest things, especially since telework has basically been killed in a lot of working sectors, that a lot of people's quality of life has gone down the crap. Because like I said, I was on a video yesterday, it's like just sitting outside of in a shopping center outside of a grocery store before I was going to get my food for the week, looking at people, 99% of the people that was walking around looked like they wanted to kill themselves. They were looking like literally the Walking Dead. Okay? So that's why I said, reading this article, there's fault for somebody who grew up here and who is still here, unfortunately, should have been gone a long time ago. I see the BS in a lot of this. I see a lot of the truths, but then I see a lot of the BS in a lot of this. So anyways, William added, in order to comfortably afford this town, like I said, you'll need $120,000. That metric includes the cost of living, think groceries, transportation, because you will be driving a lot, because a majority, 90% of the people that live in this county who make a good salary in Woodbridge, Virginia / Prince William County, 90% of the time they will have to go to Washington, D.C., Arlington, City of Alexandria, or somewhere in Fairfax. Fairfax County is a very big county. So Fairfax County could mean Springfield, or Fairfax County could mean Tyson's Corner, or Fairfax County could mean Reston and Herndon. So that ranges between 30 minutes to an hour, especially depending on traffic. And then, like I said, Easy Pass. Or if you take a commuter bus, that still costs a significant amount of money. Or if you get on the VRE, Virginia Railway Express, and whatnot, that will cost you a nice arm and a leg. So these things vary. Okay. All right. And the average monthly mortgage cost. Meanwhile, the average single family home price is above $500,000. So we got that right. While Woodbridge came out on top, Texas had the best showing overall with 6 towns in the top 10. That includes Flusher in the number 2 spot, followed by Salina and Princeton in 3rd and 4th, respectively. Rounding out the top 10 are Queen Creek in Arizona. Arizona's a state I'm very, very big on my list of moving to. I love the West Coast. California's overpriced, so I can be in Arizona, I can be next to Vegas and be next to LA. As they say in Texas, everything's chicken but the bone because my black butt is at home. All right. And followed by Prosper, Texas, Fort Mill, South Carolina, Fate, Texas, Anna, Texas, and Groveland, Florida in the 10th. And I could believe it specifically, the thing with Texas that people are attracted to is that it's no income state tax. Now, Texas does have higher Texas does a great thing of making it easier for you to become a homeowner, but you will pay higher property taxes, personal property taxes, because it lacks, the lack of the revenue of not getting income state tax. So you're paying higher personal property taxes, in a sense, higher sales taxes for anything that you buy, insurance taxes. Because I remember I was bored one day and I just wanted to look this stuff up. As far as taxes, what is that? If the state's not collecting revenue from people getting paid every month like they do in Virginia and Maryland and DC, then how are they getting revenue? And I'm like, how does Texas and Florida get the revenue? And it's like, oh, personal property taxes, gas taxes, sales taxes, what is it? And insurance taxes, things of that nature. It's like, okay, unless you're rich, it always evens itself out. But people do save money living in Texas. But once again, if you're not well-to-do, it still sucks to be poor in Texas compared to being poor in the DMV area and being poor in California and being poor in New York. Because one thing that Texas has in common with the rest of the major cities right now is that gentrification has been intensified specifically since the pandemic. Hence, case in point, Houston, Texas. Austin, Texas is just as expensive as living in the DMV right now. Dallas, Texas. Those are the main cities. The mid-sized cities in Texas that are much more affordable to live in are El Paso, Texas, Amarillo, Texas, and San Antonio, Texas. So those are Waco, Texas. Those are the mid-sized cities that are much more affordable because they're not the major cities like the other cities that I mentioned before. All right. So, anyways, for this report, gold banking rates identified suburbs with a 2023 population between 20,000 to 100,000. Then for each community, it considered its population change from 2018 to 2023. The number of residents aged 65 and over, total household medium incomes. Additionally, it identified each town's cost of living, livability index, and the average value of a single family home. So it really didn't get into the quality of life. They just got into the numbers, and I'm not mad at that. But the older I get, the more I appreciate my quality of life going up. I remember talking to this man named Wendell, brother that lived, and this was 10 years ago, 2015, brother that lived in Fredericksburg, but he commuted to Washington, D.C. So, and he's like, and so his whole thing was, hey, he bought this house in Fredericksburg for his family. He's just trying to, he was working for Homeland Security. He's just trying to, work until he retired. And then him and his wife were going to move to South Carolina, where he was originally from. But he was talking about, he was going to, once his son graduated high school and goes to college, he was going to sell their house and get like a 2-bedroom apartment in Alexandria, because they figured, hey, we're going to pay the same, but or a 2-level townhome, one or the other. But his whole thing was, my quality of life has gone to crap. And that was really the first time somebody really went in. I said, really, why is that? Hold on a second. I said, why is your quality of life going to crap, man? And he says, oh, it's very simple. He's like, living in Fredericksburg, it's nice. We can go out to a restaurant every now and then. He said, but, he's like, I don't have much time to work out anymore because I'm always on the train. He's like, I work out now at the gym in my building. So he's like, I started doing that in the morning. So I would get to work 2 hours early so I could work out at the gym and then, do my work day and then go to sleep on the train, on the way home. And then by the time I get home, shower, eat, pack up for the next day. And that's all she wrote. I said, dang, that does suck. He's like, yeah, he's like, I like to go to a football game, go to a baseball game. I want to maybe take my wife out to a nicer restaurant overlooking the city, things of that nature. He said, I can't do that living in Fredericksburg. And by the time I get home, it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock and I'm done. I was like, I can believe that. So the quality of life in the DMV area is not the best if you have a long commute. It's not the best if you have to go to work every day. It's not the best if you if you're not rich. So these are things to take into consideration, because you're talking about making 120,000, unless you have a significant, and I got to get into this before I call it a day because I got stuff to do. Making $120,000 a year in the DMV area, that's including Woodbridge, is not what it used to be. Now, I know a lot of people who are making $30,000 to $50,000 would beg to differ, but bear in mind, you're in a higher tax bracket, so the chances of you getting taxed more by the state and the federal government are much more higher. I'm not a CPA, but I've known this through my own experience and seeing other people go through it as well. All right, that's number one. Number two, your average cost of rent in Woodbridge now is is no less than $1,600. Your average you need a decent car to live in this area, because even with the bus system being what it is, it's decent, but you need a decent car to get around this area unless you got somebody to drive you around. So your average car payment nowadays is between $700 to $800. Okay, so if you do the math right there, that's $2,500 to $2,600 right there. Let's just say around that. At the most $2,700. Plus, we're not adding in food. When I added, that you have to, most people, especially if you got a family, I saw a woman with a $400 bill for groceries yesterday, okay, at the cheapest grocery store in Woodbridge, known as Food Line. $400 for 2 kids, herself and her husband for the week, not the month, the week. I spend $100-some a week on food for myself. So I'm going to leave it at that, though. At least 150 to 160 on food for myself a week. Okay. Then if you're commuting, gas, wear and tear on your vehicle, personal property taxes on your car, insurance on your car. What else we got? If you got, if you're taking public transportation, that's going to run you about up to $300 a month, depending on the service, or up to, and then at least going to be $150 to $180 a month. But nowadays with inflation, let's just go to even number of $300. Okay. Now, if you work for a company or a government entity, that might give you a certain percentage that could help out, obviously. So these are just things to take into consideration. Okay. Eventually, you're going to want to go out to eat and do something, go to a movie, do something fun or whatnot. That's going to run you about, especially if you take a date or your significant other out, that's going to run you about $80 to $100 between the tickets, the food, the driving, the parking, whatever the case may be. These are the things to take into consideration. Okay. So, the quality of life in the DMV area is, for somebody coming from a war-torn country, yeah, the quality of life in the DMV area is going to be amazing or whatnot. Somebody who grew up in the hood, yeah, the quality of life of living in Woodbridge is going to be amazing or whatnot. But for somebody that likes, has already grew up like myself, grew up in a decent suburb and has seen this and been there and done that, for somebody who likes to go out and have a good time but don't want to have to drive an hour to get to that location or whatnot, it's not that much fun. Okay. So, even in Phoenix, Arizona, when I've gone out and done outings and whatnot, everything wasn't catered to downtown Phoenix like everything in the DMV area is catered to freaking DC. Okay. I was able to go see, the last time I was in Phoenix, I got to see Bill Bellamy. That was in downtown Phoenix. But the first time, no, my bad, the second time I went to Phoenix, I got to see comedians in suburban areas. Suburban areas, not the city, not downtown. Parking was free. It was, I got to see Earthquake, and it was at, the comedy place was in a regular suburb. Then this other young lady, I forgot, she was from DC, got to see her in this shopping mall, and the shopping mall was amazing. They had great entertainment, they had great restaurants, they had a comedy place, amazing place to be, concerts, all that good stuff in the suburbs. So if I can give any advice to anybody living in Woodbridge, Virginia, talk to your local people, representatives, what they call here county board of supervisors, and your state delegates is what other states would call state senators and congresspeople, and say, hey, you guys are having all these developers develop all these freaking overpriced houses and overpriced shopping malls. For the love of God, can you put a place here where we can and talk to a business, certain businesses to talk about having comedians come, opening up a comedian theater and a local concert venue in this area? Because for God's sakes, there's nothing to do out here but be basic and boring. And that's why every time when I come back, I put on Facebook, what's up, all you uptight, basic, boring, people, unhappy people? I put that on there every time I come back because that's what majority of the time, that's what I see. So on that note, if you stayed this long, thank you for watching. Do the great thiefing things, like, share, and subscribe. Specifically, so go to YouTube, subscribe to Larry's Anything Goes, LLC. One more time, Larry's Anything Goes, LLC. And then subscribe to Patterson L Properties, LLC. Patterson L Properties, LLC. I would greatly appreciate it. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Make money move so you can live like fools. As they say in Spanish. Bienvenido a la vida. Welcome to the life.